welcome to Mission West Virginia, brought to you by the West Virginia Library Television Network and Mission West Virginia. I'm your host, Rachel Kinder, Director of the Frameworks Program, and today my guest is Danielle Ellis, and she is a foster adoptive mom. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Would you care to introduce yourself to our audience? Just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Danielle Ellis. I am an insurance agent here in the Charleston area. My husband is an IT guy, and we're self-employed, and we have all three types of kids, birth kids, step kids, foster kids, adopted kids. Yeah.
And we were talking before the show started about, there's a lot of blended families these days.
Yeah.
And we're just kind of another kind of family.
Exactly.
So what can you tell our audience, what kind of got you started on your fostering journey?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it was, I truly felt called to it. I felt like the Lord laid it on my heart that there were so many kids without a family out there, and I really kind of wanted to try motherhood and see, as I was entering my 30s, and see how that would go. I was very career oriented, and I thought, you know what, let's foster first and let's honor that call. And I'm so glad that we did. So we actually fostered together first before having birth children.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have stepkids, and then you have one biological child and two adopted children, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are the age ranges there?
So our teenagers, my husband's two older children are 14 and 12. And then we also have our two adopted children. They are 13 months apart. Mm-hmm. Nate is 6 and Evie is 5. And then we have Ace that we had together. He is 2, and a little girl due in April, a few months.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
So what was your first step when you said, I really feel called to be a foster or adoptive parent? What did you do?
Well, I had the advantage of having a best friend who had already been through the process. So I reached out to her contacts at Stepstone Youth. I filled out an application to be a foster parent. I signed up for what they call Pride training and went through online training, self-paced, and some of it was classroom learning. Submitted the paperwork, and then our home was opened. The whole process took probably about 4 or 5 months.
That's very smooth.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Were there any fears that you kind of had to talk yourself out of, you or your spouse?
Yeah. I was nervous about what everybody says, getting too attached. Mm-hmm. I've come to learn that that's not a thing. But I was worried about having kids taken away. I was also worried that we wouldn't have enough support in our family or through the community. But what I really found was our community embraced us as foster parents. A lot of foster parents, their fear is that they don't have community or they feel isolated. Mm-hmm. But, our church especially really stepped in to help us. We took advantage of some foster closets for some clothing needs. We also had wonderful support through our agency through the whole process. So I felt very loved.
That's wonderful. So at my agency, we recruit foster parents, and one of the most successful ways is word of mouth. Do you feel that having a friend that fostered was kind of introduced the idea to you and made
Absolutely.
It more familiar to you?
Yes, and that's how I knew how dire the need was.
Right.
And I would hear all kinds of stories, calls that she wasn't able to take. That was a very real wake-up call.
Yeah, and that's something we tell people is you will get lots of calls, and you won't be able to say yes to all of the calls, and that's something to really kind of gear up for. So your kids are adopted now. You fostered them,
Yes.
and then now they're adopted.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that process like for you?
Well, the adoption process for us was complicated because of COVID, the court delays and things like that. So I don't think it's always normally like that. There was also you'll hear a lot of foster parents talk about the system. And I believe what they mean by that is the court dates and how, we can only do so much and the social workers are overwhelmed. So there was some, stress back and forth of that. And our children's adoption actually did get postponed a couple of times due to just court delays and proceedings and, not able to operate this day or that day. That delayed it probably another 6 to 8 months longer than it normally would have been.
Yeah.
But, it wasn't ever about the kids. It was just procedural delays and processing that caused it to take a little longer. But we stuck to everything. We stuck with our community. We kept advocating for our kids the whole time. We shared what they were doing, what their progress was like, and really what it took to care for them. I think I shared with you that, especially my son, he's 6, he has Down syndrome. And one of the reasons that he entered care was because of the additional needs that he had, the additional care that was required of him. And the story that I tell my kids about why they entered foster care, and others if they ask, is that the birth mom loved them very much, but she just wasn't ready to care for them and wasn't ready to be a mommy. So that is the same reason for a lot of kids that enter foster care, but that is the reason that they entered our care, and we were able to then go through the adoption process and make our family formal. Yeah.
And when they entered your home, did you know that you would be adopting them, or was it still a foster placement when they came to you?
Strictly foster.
Yeah.
I don't know that anybody ever really fully knows, because things can change.
Right.
That's the reality of it. But we wanted to adopt. Like, our intention was to adopt. We were open to whatever was best for the child. We were open to adopting if that is what the circumstances, she wasn't able to complete the steps needed to, reunify, then we were open to adopting them. And I think that's how you have to be, holding your children with open hands and open arms, and advocating for what's best for them. And of course, with those additional needs, it ended up being that coming to our home was what was best for Nathan, and then for Evie as well.
And were they placed together?
Sort of.
Okay.
So when we accepted placement of Nathan, he was 3 months old.
Oh, wow.
And he had open heart surgery at 5 months old.
Oh.
And sometime in those 2 months, we found out that birth mom was pregnant. And so we got little sister a few months later, and then adopted them together.
And you have sent me some videos. Your daughter is pretty vocal about foster care adoption.
She is.
What does she know, and what's her understanding of it all?
So she saw me have her little brother, have a baby in my tummy, and that's when she really started to ask questions about, when was I in your tummy? And I explained to her, you didn't grow in my belly, you grew in my heart. That's how I put it to her, meaning I wished for you and I had a desire to find you. Sorry, I'm getting emotional.
It's an emotional topic.
It is, and I explained to her that her birth mother grew her in her belly, and that I came to the hospital when she was born, and I was able to bring her home and be her mommy at that point. And again, tying it into, your birth mother loved you so much. You were loved the whole time, but she wasn't ready to be a mommy at the time, but I was. And we have advocated for our version of open adoption this whole time, that, she's 5 years old now, and throughout her life, when her birth mother reaches out and says, how are the kids? I would like to see them. We say, of course. And we meet with her as long as it continues to be safe for the kids, because overwhelming research and statements from adult adoptees, which is who I want to hear from, says that adult adoptees, the whole time they were being raised by their adopted parents, wanted to know their birth parents too, as long as it was safe to do so. And for us, it is. And that is exactly why I want her to know where she came from and that she was always loved, to prevent possible issues later, or anxieties or curiosity. Let's just be open from the get-go and transparent.
And I shared before the show, my family has an open adoption as well, and I'm seeing more of it, and it's becoming more of the norm, and I'm so excited about that. But also, I've seen people speak on adoption, and the closed adoption era is over, whether you want it to be over or not, because we have DNA testing, we have Facebook. There's no hiding it anymore,
Right.
And it shouldn't be hidden. It shouldn't be something that kids don't know from the beginning.
Right. Be proud.
Absolutely. So I've noticed that my kids have an easier time with it than some adults, and adults kind of get caught up on labels and what do you call it, and maybe kids don't understand. Do your kids really differentiate who's a sibling in what manner, or
Not at all.
how does that work in your house?
Like I said, we have some of each. We have step brothers, we have half brothers, we have adopted brothers, biological brothers. I mean, for us, they're just all brothers. They're just sisters. I mean, there's no differentiation. And I think back to what you were saying, that the era of closed adoption being over, it truly is a generational thing.
It is.
Because there will be a lot of, older adults who are like, what? You have them around the birth mother? But everybody who's, my age and younger, that's great that you all do that. That's wonderful. That's so healthy. That's so healing. So it's definitely depends on who you talk to.
It does, and we answer that question a lot when people call and maybe they're brand new to foster care. They don't always have a friend who's fostering or have had that personal life experience, and they say, like, will the birth parents meet us? Will we have to meet them? Will they know where we live? Like, will we be safe? And I really try to get the idea across that it's not an issue of safety so much as, being able to parent.
Yeah, and what's best for your children, because you don't want your 20-year-old child to try to find out where they came from and not know without your guidance. Like, I can guide her now.
Right.
She's 5. I can guide her and I can show her that she's safe and explore from a safe place and educate her this whole time. So why would I pass that up?
Right. You can really model healthy relationships and appropriate boundaries and all of that. So you're not currently fostering now, right?
Right.
Because
our home is closed.
You will soon have 6 kids.
Yes.
But I get the impression you're very active in promoting the idea of foster care and adoption.
We are.
I've seen some TikTok videos and.
Yeah. At our agency, we still participate in the blanket drive yearly for Stepstone Youth.
I saw that on Facebook recently.
Backpacks for foster care as well, the Wrapped in Love, all of those things. Anytime we get an opportunity to shout out foster care, we use all platforms that we have access to make sure that people are aware of it and to dispel misconceptions about foster care. I shared earlier, like, you can't get too attached because those children, it's vital to their development.
Right.
And for someone like me to say, I'm too worried to be fostering because I might get too attached, that's selfish, frankly. I mean, it's these children, if they don't have a healthy attachment to grow with, they can end up with so many other complications in their life. Anything from, developmental delays and disorders to mental health problems as adults. But we risk a broken heart that we can heal from because we're adults and we can process through that. So that was the way I looked at it, is this is a risk worth taking.
And I tell people when they it's a common line, I would get too attached. And I kind of say, great, that's what the kids need. They need someone who could get too attached. But I think that there are people, fostering's not for everyone. So that's something my agency kind of works on, is like talking people through their fears, and some of them are founded and some of them are not. And, we can give people the realistic picture. But also I think it's a decision people have to make for themselves. And, not everyone is willing to make that sacrifice, or it may not be that point in time for them or for their family. But we do kind of try to promote it as like, this is a West Virginia problem. This is the West Virginia community. These are our kids, and somebody has to step up for them. So what would you tell someone who's considering fostering or adopting?
I would say that it's worth the risk, that it absolutely can set you on the greatest journey of the rest of your life. And you'll never know unless you try.
So do your families interact with other foster adoptive families through your agency, or through
We do. A lot of the people that we were in Pride classes with have adopted children at this point, and we stay friends on Facebook. We've even, gone to each other's birthday parties, and it's so nice because they get it. Nobody, like, it's just like having another mom friend, but an extra layer of that because they've fostered and they've adopted, and we understand, quirky things like don't sit on that kid's blanket or whatever it is, because we've all been there. Yeah.
It's really vital. I have worked in the field for, 25 years, and so I have lots of social worker friends, but and I know the system, and I know the policy, and I know all the bits and pieces, but it's the fellow foster adoptive mom friends that are really vital, that you can really, share that very quirky thing that a family that has not fostered or adopted just isn't gonna get.
Right.
Some of it's some dark humor sometimes, like just the questions that you never thought you would answer to your kids. And I think peer support is really vital.
Absolutely.
What about your stepsons? Were they on board when you said we're going to start fostering? And
yeah, they were gung ho about it, and especially Derek, my oldest stepson, he was so excited. It happened to be that when we got the call for Nathan, that I was bringing him home on what we would call guys' night. So I said, here we go, like we've got another baby for guys' night. And they were so excited. They wanted to hold him all the time. They helped with feeding his bottles, and Derek even like he stole my little wrap from me and like wore Nate around. He was 6 years old at the time and very strong, and he would just put Nathan on and wear him everywhere. And I was like the mom, like walking nearby, and I'm like, I look useless, like my kids are taking care of the baby.
That's so sweet, though.
Yeah, it was really sweet.
And so your son has more needs, but you shared with me that you do still get support from your agency, even though he's adopted, so he's really not their like client anymore.
Right. I can call up my agency and ask them about anything from, resources for special needs foster parents to recommendations for doctors or therapists. I mean, they're wonderful to connect us where we need to go because they became friends during that process.
And I do, let the public know, so we have adoption subsidies, we have medical cards, so it's not, even though you have adopted them, you get that changed birth certificate, they are your children, they do have more support than your children by birth.
Right, and a lot of people don't know too, there's also, a couple years ago, foster children were added to the Crime Victims Compensation Fund.
Yes, that's a good thing to talk about.
That's huge, and it's allowed us to take my son Nathan to music therapy, which is very beneficial for him. It's allowing us to take Evie to play therapy as well. Play therapy can run $150 an hour, but you can get reimbursed by the Crime Victims Compensation Fund. All foster children are approved, even if you got them from birth, which is her case. And that has been wonderful to help them process emotions. I've even heard that equine therapy is covered under the Crime Victims Compensation Fund. So
it's pretty neat. We're trying to spread the word about that too. We have been qualified for our case, and basically it's the concept that if there's an abuse and neglect petition filed for your child, they are a crime victim. The process was a little long for us to get approved, but now that we're approved, it's good till what, 26?
Yeah, 26 years old, I believe, and I just actually applied for Evie last week. For us, it took about 7 days, like start to finish. Yeah,
I think we might have been an earlier case.
Yes, and it's going much faster now.
Oh, that's great. We need to get the word out more about that. You're welcome to, if you're watching, contact me at Mission, West Virginia, and I would be happy to connect you to the people that qualify your kids, because I don't think the word is out about that. And I really think, when my son is older and maybe isn't on my family insurance anymore, he'll still be qualified until he's in his mid-20s. So it's pretty advantageous.
Very worthwhile. Well, and having a son with Down syndrome, I mean, I joked with my husband, I said, we're going to bankrupt that whole thing. We're going to spend the whole thing because we are in all the therapies, and not all of them are covered by his Medicaid, things that benefit him. So I'm very excited to be able to take advantage of that and provide him with additional opportunities that would be a little harder for us to afford otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. We had some psychological testing done that they don't take insurance where we had it done, so we just got it reimbursed. It was so nice. So when you got the call and they said this is a baby with Down syndrome, here's what I was thinking is I was with my friend who is a foster mom who has an adopted son. He's 11 now, but I was there when she got the call. He was a baby and he was on oxygen, and some families were afraid to take a baby on oxygen, and that ended up kind of being the tip of the iceberg because he ended up on a feeding tube. And but I get the hesitancy, and she said to me, I said, we were being friends, and I said, this is not the best time for you. I don't think you should say yes. And she's like, Ray, who's going to take him? And it ended up kind of being fated. But do you know if you were the first call?
We were, because at the time my stepsons were 4 years old and 6 years old.
Okay.
And so we had set the limits for our home that we wanted a child who was younger than them to be able to bring them up together. And so we were getting calls. I mean, we had calls for 3-year-old, we had calls for Nathan, and it was funny because when we got the call, they hadn't found his medical record yet. So they actually weren't 100% sure that he had Down syndrome. They were just like, he looks like he might. And I didn't know anything about Down syndrome. So I said, okay, sure. I mean, I called my husband and we prayed about it, and we said, we feel like this is the yes. This is what we need to say yes to this. And I was on the interstate. I turned my car around, headed to, get a couple more baby things in his diaper sizes and get ready for him. he did not come to us on oxygen, but I just remember feeling so freaked out, like they're handing me this baby. Like nobody, they didn't know, like what formula does he like to take? Like how does he like to be burped or held or nothing? It's not like how you hand your child off to the babysitter when you know them and you say, okay, here's been his schedule for the day. Here's how he's eating. Here's how he's doing. Here's this. It was just, here you go. And so I had to, you know, figure that out. And it was a learning curve for sure, but we just loved him. We fell in love with him, and by the time they found his medical record, you know, yes, he has Down syndrome. Yes, he's going to need open heart surgery. You know, here you go. We were already like so much in love with him, and I learned along the way, like a lot of people do. But a lot of people get like either a birth diagnosis or a prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome, so they have an opportunity to kind of prepare. You know, we had to learn on the fly.
I'm guessing your agency had a lot of faith in you, that, you know, they got that placement call and said, oh, I'm thinking of this family, and that's who they called first.
I guess so.
Does it feel like fate, you know, like it was meant to be?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I know without a doubt that those are my kids, that they were meant to be with us and we were meant to be their parents. And, you know, especially Nathan, like he's opened up a whole different line of thinking for our family. A lot of people who are parents of kids with Down syndrome, they call themselves the lucky few. And that is because a child with Down syndrome teaches you kindness, patience, acceptance, love, all kinds of things that it's a beautiful community, the Down syndrome community. So we're not just part of the foster and adoptive community, but also the Down syndrome community. And there's a lot of people who are on waiting lists to adopt kids with Down syndrome because they are so cool. So.
We get that call sometimes when people say, do you have, you know, kids with Down syndrome waiting? And to my knowledge, we don't, because I work with waiting youth, and that's not a need that commonly gets identified to us.
Yeah.
Because I think they do make placements. I have, you know, really noticed that that adoption really does kind of connect you to multiple communities. So, you know, we're a foster adoptive family. We're connected to that community. My son's biracial, so we have made a lot of progress to be connected with Black communities. And it's just, it's interesting where you end up because it's so unknown.
Yeah.
And having birth children is its own unknown, but maybe not as much.
Right, you know the family history. I mean, it's always a little awkward when you go to a doctor's appointment sometimes, and they're asking questions about, you know, are you allergic to such and such? Well, you know, hold on, this kid's adopted. You know, like, and we have unknown family history. Here's what I know, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful to be part of the adopted community, the Down syndrome community, the biracial community. You know, I truly believe that all of our stories are orchestrated, and that what's meant to be will be. And
I don't know where I was going with that, but it's pretty emotional.
Yeah.
To look back on and just kind of see how things lined up. So I feel like your story could be intimidating to someone who's never fostered. What were the first couple of months like as new parents to a child with medical needs? And was there ever a point where you said, oh my gosh, what am I doing?
Yes. It was when I remember the day that I got Nathan's, that I took him to the doctor, and I didn't know, but it was part of the same network of providers that he had been at his original, you know, birth home.
Okay.
And so that's how they found his medical record. And the doctor came in with a little Post-it note, and she said, so here, he does have Down syndrome. Like, it was like an, oh, by the way, you know, just here you go. And he's gonna need open heart surgery. And I've listened to his heart sats. Like, I'm concerned. I texted a cardiologist friend of mine, and she's gonna see you guys today at 1. Can you get over there?
Oh, wow.
And I freaked out because, I mean, I knew that he was breathing kind of funny, but I didn't have the equipment at home to monitor his O2 sats. So she got us straight over for an echo at the cardiologist. And when I get to the cardiologist, I get texts from the social worker saying, I need to put eyes on this baby today. I need to see him. And I remember having like one bottle with me, and I'm like, if I don't go take him to the social worker right now, I mean, I was so overwhelmed. So I met her at a McDonald's, and she's grilling me about his, medical, because we didn't have a bond of trust yet. That's something that I tell people, you're going to form a bond of trust with your social worker as a foster parent. And then, I mean, after we had that, like, she hardly even checked on us because she trusted that, we needed her, that we would get what we needed, but she didn't know me yet, and she wanted to check on that baby. And I realized that looking back. So I remember taking to this little McDonald's, and he's fussy, and I've got the one bottle, and I'm just trying to, get through the day. That was a really particularly hard day. And then also when we met his geneticist, and they gave me the typical timeline for, a kid with Down syndrome, like they'll potty train at this age, they'll do this at this age, they'll walk here, and it was, going to be delayed from typical development. And I didn't really have much experience with typical development either. So, I mean, I remember shutting that timeline and saying, forget it. He's going to do what he's going to do when he's going to do it, and we're going to love Nathan for who he is, and it's going to be fine. And it has been. And both Nathan and Evie are defying odds and breaking barriers and making huge progress and raising awareness in the community for Down syndrome, for foster care, for other kids who are like them.
I feel like she could end up as a spokesperson for
she really could.
All of it.
She cracks me up. She wanted to start a cookie business not too long ago, and I helped her with it. She's got entrepreneur parents, like okay, but she wanted some things that it wasn't anywhere near her birthday, and I said, okay, then you've got to figure out a way to pay for them. What can you do? She said, I can bake cookies, and she has some additional dietary needs. Just dairy-free, gluten-free, things like that. And so Evie started her little cookie business and got herself the little car that she wanted, a remote control car, and now she's working toward a bicycle. So
that's impressive.
Yeah.
I would think there would be other people with dietary restrictions that this might be great for.
Exactly.
Like she's got a great audience to sell to.
Yeah, and I know a lot of business owners in the community because of my work in insurance, and so she's marketed to my clients and friends. It's very funny.
So do you know of anyone that you have actually gotten them to foster adopt?
Yeah, there's been a few people.
Are you keeping count?
I've lost count, but we throughout our journey did share on Facebook about fostering, just to raise awareness and to also, ask our community for emotional support. These are some things that you can pray for us. You can pray that court goes well and that the children will, their needs will be heard. Things like that. I didn't share specifics about our case, but I would share that we want the judge to see these additional needs that Nathan has, or that the judge will be able to tell that what is best for the kids, or that we won't have this court date postponed again, things like that. And our community really rallied behind us, especially like my church. I shared before, they, when we brought Nathan home from the hospital, one of the times they came and helped to, give us like meals and things like that. And because we had a baby on oxygen and we couldn't go anywhere. Right. We were quarantining before his heart surgery, and they were wonderful to us to help.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I really love that so many people are going to get to hear your story, because it's such a great example of why people should be open to foster care and adoption. This has been another episode of Mission West Virginia. Our show will be taking a hiatus, but we will see you again at some point in the future, we hope. And thank you so much for being with us.